Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for identifying and dealing with Leo narcissists. So um, again, as I have been stating in front of all these videos, I'm not a mental health professional. I'm using the term narcissism to cover certain personality traits that are problem personality traits. And yes, it is on a spectrum. Sometimes people are self-absorbed, but it's just a minor annoyance and they're basically decent people. Some people are completely indifferent to other people's feelings and they engage in active campaigns to tear people down, and that is like the ultimate destructive side to it. So let's look at it in terms of the sign of Leo. But let me just say too that narcissism to me is about power, is about control, and is about taking a person's inner self-loathing and kind of like, it's like flinging feces at somebody, kind of like what monkeys do in the zoo. They fling feces at other people, but it's that self-loathing that is the feces that is inside of that person. And instead of feeling that shame or that other negative emotion, they project it onto somebody else and they say those things as if that person has those qualities. Or if they notice certain weaknesses within a person, they can really play them up. And it's all to get it out, away from them because it's coming, they feel that so strongly within themselves. But control is an important thing because a lot of these people come from backgrounds of trauma, either through abuse as children or some kind of traumatic event, the death of a parent, some sort of situation that was very scary or, life-threatening in some cases. So in order to feel in control, they engage in very destructive patterns. So Leo is a fixed fire sign, and Leo is ruled by the sun. So when people think of Leo, they automatically think of narcissists. Let's get real here. We make jokes about that because the sun is like, the center of our universe and is so, ubiquitous. It's so much a part of who we are. And that's what Leos want to be. Now, a healthy Leo is able to turn it on and off. That, in other words, they may be enjoying being the center of attention because they're natural hams and they are natural, they're just fiery personas. And the balanced Leo is very warm-hearted and generous and things like that. But when it's in the imbalanced expression, it's a person who needs to be the center of attention at all times. And we can observe that. I'm sure most people have seen individuals who are very loud, like they will always talk very loudly so that people, turn their heads. They don't care if there's a negative connotation to what they're doing, or if other people, they get a negative impression, if people have a negative impression of them, as long as people are paying attention. So doing outrageous things, saying outrageous things, wearing items that draw attention to them. And this can be in the form of, flashy clothing, dramatic clothing, Just something, if they have Aquarius prominent, they may have something very unusual, or that kind of like goes against the grain. And so other people may even have kind of a negative feeling when they're looking at such a person, like, having piercings in their, cheek. And nothing against anything like that, but something that's very attention getting, and that the average person doesn't have, or pink hair, green hair. It's not to say, oh, everybody who does this is doing so because they just crave attention, but this is something that someone like this would do, because they need it. It's not just a preference. This is the energy vampire extraordinaire, the person who has to suck all the oxygen out of the room. And actually, even on the less malignant side of the spectrum, or less destructive side, these people can be very exhausting to be around because they are so over the top. And, I think a lot of people know exactly what I'm talking about when you're dealing with somebody and they just are always on, and they don't seem to be genuine a lot of times because they are, putting on an act, if you will. And this is actually one of the aspects of narcissism, is that the true self is not being revealed, and it's like this facade. And for Leo, the facade is very in your face, and it can create a lot of draining of other people's energy as a result. The Leo narcissist needs to feel like they are the queen or king bee. And again, I associate Leo with royalty. And yet there is that sense of, the imagery of the queen or the king, the crown. That's a sign of dignity. And Leos who are balanced will show, they have immense understanding of dignity when it comes to other people. And it's like a beautiful thing to behold, because they will honor others in the way that they would like to be honored. And it's different than like how a Cancer person is respectful of somebody else. With Cancer, it's more in terms of caring and nurturing them, maybe doing things for them. With Leo, it's how they regard others. And I feel like it can be very healing for a person to be in the presence of a balanced Leo, because they can really see the good in people and bring it out. Leos make great leaders. When a Leo is a narcissist, they make nightmare bosses, nightmare people in authority, because there's it's the sign of the petty tyrant. Again, this is Dr. Dyer. I don't know if he coined that phrase, but I want to attribute to him if that's who did it, because we're talking about people who may not be prominent in the grand scheme of things, but they may manage a store and to them that's their kingdom. And so they treat underlings very disrespectfully. Actually, one of the signs of a narcissist is how they treat waitstaff, how they treat people that they are paying to do things, maybe like their cleaning service, or the best example are waitstaff, because that's when you can directly observe them, giving orders to people, and they will tend to overdo it. And they will also tend to speak in a disdainful tone. So, I was just talking about this with my partner because he was observing this behavior. Not necessarily with a Leo, though, but in general, this is narcissistic behavior. Why do they do it with these types of people? Well, first of all, a narcissist believes there's a pecking order in life. And this means that if somebody is allegedly lower on the pecking order than the narcissist, they will feel entitled to lord it over that person. And so in the workplace, if you are working for this type of person, one of the reasons it can be so excruciating is because they are really demeaning you in every encounter, the way that they talk. And people don't understand. It's not sometimes what a person says, but how they say it. And we know when somebody is disrespecting us, even if they, if you were able to parse their sentences, if you had it on film and you transcribed it, you wouldn't see any proof of it. It's all in the tone. It can be in the facial expressions. And it leaves the person who is being talked to in this way feeling very low, feeling very, or maybe feeling very confused about, am I good enough? And in a workplace situation, it can be anxiety producing because the person may feel like, oh my God, my job might be on the line. I don't know if my boss is happy with my work. Another thing that goes on with these types of people is self-absorption. So with Leo, they may be just concerned with their own life, with their own accomplishments. And if you're a friend of a Leo who you can't even get a word in edgewise, they are just always talking about themselves. And I'm going to bring in this other piece to it of bragging. Bragging is something that comes from low self-esteem. You have to understand there is something called healthy pride or healthy ego, where a person is truly proud of what they have accomplished, and they may want to share it with others. There's nothing wrong with sharing your accomplishments with other people. There are some people who are very insecure, and if you share your accomplishments with them, they may accuse you or they may gossip about you and say, oh, so-and-so is such a braggart. They were telling me about all these things, and they were just rubbing it in my face. When in fact, that person who is complaining about a so-called braggart really felt triggered because of their own insecurities. But it wasn't that the other person was necessarily trying to rub it in their face, feeling superior to them. That could simply be their interpretation because of their own issues. And it's unfortunate that people, think like that because, it's really like somebody who, as human beings, we are excited when we have a success or when, we receive good news. And we're social animals, so we want to tell somebody about that. And it's always so hurtful when another person brushes it off, demeans it, kind of tries to question whether or not that's really an accomplishment or somehow diminishes it, or if they just ignore it and just keep yakking about themselves. And so this is one of those types of signs that can do this, unfortunately. And bragging, and not just bragging about themselves, but bragging about their children. You know, those bumper stickers that say, you know, my dog is smarter than your middle schooler and stuff. Those kinds of things are the result of having to endure somebody bragging about themselves, and then they switch topics and start bragging about their children and things like that. One of the types of situations that accompanies this is looking at one's children as extensions of the ego. You know, I think of the Leo mom who is a narcissist as being a stage mom, you know, especially if she wanted to be in entertainment and she couldn't do it for whatever reason, so she tries to live vicariously through her child and then pushes that child. And perhaps the child doesn't want to do it, but the parent is very overbearing. And another, when I say overbearing, I have here, I put down here, controlling. Leo is a fixed sign. Fixed signs are not really, it's really funny because typically fixed signs are more enduring than like trying to initiate things. So fixed signs are called the builders. But in terms of how they interact with others personally, to me, it's kind of like the steamroller, where when they are motivated to do things, and by the way, that may not be very easy for them because they are very into their routines and they're not really, so they like just not even having to think and just like be able to do certain things every day. So they're really great at being disciplined on a schedule. But when they do act and initiate things, they can be like a steamroller where they just keep at it and at it and at it. And in relationships, there can be an obsessive quality, and this can be quite controlling. You know, and actually, when you think about it, people who are obsessive, it's a form of control, because if the other person kind of is like, I'm not so sure, not really that into you, they won't take no for an answer. So that can be problematic, to say the least. Somebody that is incapable of respecting another person's boundaries. That's what control is, and that is total. I haven't even written that down. I just wrote a few bullet points, but you know, come to think of it, that's one of the early red flags with a narcissistic personality. And like I said, I mean, this could be on the spectrum, what we would just generally call a problem personality, where they do not respect your boundaries. If you tell them, please don't do this, or, you know, could you please call before you come over, they totally ignore you. Now, what happens to certain signs that are weenies? Okay, yes, I'm going there. Bring it on. Libra, Pisces, Virgo. If a sign, maybe Cancer, if a sign is a weenie, they're going to they're going to keep quiet when this person is invading their space, ignoring their boundaries. One of the things personally that I have had to do since doing personal readings almost 5 years ago is kind of like see these red flags, because sometimes, you know, you can see that a person is like this. And again, this is not just Leo. Let's not get it twisted here. But one of the things is when the person does not listen to what you are saying, and saying, okay, I'm going to take care of you on this day. And what a person will typically say is, do you think you could do it earlier than that? Or, you know, they contact you before the deadline that you have given. And again, this doesn't mean that somebody is bad, but people who cannot accept another person's boundary can cause problems for others, because and for themselves, because they will push people away. I've refunded money and canceled readings because of this, because I've had experiences where it didn't end well when I ignored that type of behavior. Pushy behavior, controlling behavior that is accompanied with money. Again, talking about the waiter situation. This is this type of person where they feel that they are entitled. Okay, so that sense of entitlement is very pronounced in a narcissistic person, somebody with narcissistic personality disorder. They, especially if they are paying for it, they act like they're little kings and queens. And so, how do you deal? Okay, well, let me say one more thing, because this to me is very damaging, is arrogance. Arrogance is feeling better than others and demonstrating that in some way. It could be straight up put downs. It can be little digs. It can be simply snubbing somebody, where, let's say, the narcissist is at a party and they are holding court. They are kind of like the center of attention. And they kind of like, kind of cliquey, where they are acknowledging only certain people. And it's like the rest of the people are riffraff to the narcissist. So this kind of thing, if it's a parent-child relationship, the child can feel very insecure emotionally, because the parent may put them down, may imply that the child is not good enough. And in some cases, because the Leo narcissist has, they identify with their children's accomplishments as a reflection on them, or lack thereof, I should say. And they can make it hell for the child to simply enjoy school for what it is, instead of having to be a straight A student because they have a parent with extremely low self-esteem, but somebody who pretends that they are so confident. Children aren't here to make us look good. That's not their job. And if you're, friends, let's say, with somebody who's always bragging, and that's also like a form of competitiveness, because these people want to be numero uno, but it's also wanting to have attention given to them for their accomplishments. If this is a person who you can see that they are not malicious to you, but there's an insecurity there that makes them brag a lot and makes them seek attention, what you can do is show appreciation, or, if you really feel that they have accomplished something. I'm not asking anybody to be fake, but that you do show them their due. But if they continue on that road and you try to tell them something about your life and they're not interested, point it out to them. Don't be insulting, but say, I notice that after I listened to you talk, I wanted to share with you and I didn't feel that you were listening with me. How do you feel about that? Sometimes if the person is a narcissist, they will get upset. So you have to risk that such a person may get upset. They may tell you to buzz off. But you really haven't lost anything, because when you're around somebody who's always talking about themselves and doesn't show an interest in you, what kind of relationship is that? If this person is controlling and they're trying to control you in some way, maybe it's a boss to an employee and you're the employee. And yet they do have control over you because of their position, but you feel that they're micromanaging you. You can just simply say, I will be more effective if you give me some space. But you have to always, it's a given that we have to expect that we may not be working for a person if we say things like this. So in some cases, you may just voluntarily leave anyway, because you don't want to be subjected to a narcissistic boss. But in some cases, it's not possible because you haven't saved up the money to do so. So in those types of scenarios, if you can ignore it, that would be wonderful, meaning that you do understand what this person is up to. Let's say this is it's hard to ignore when you're working closely with somebody like this. But in some cases, it won't be that big of a deal, and you will be able to be very direct about it, and you have to convey a sense of your own inner power. You can't be afraid of the consequences. So it's not an easy road to hoe, truth be told, because you may, get somebody upset. And if that's terrifying for you, then you're going to have to keep that relationship, if you want to maintain it, and just have it be one-sided. I personally don't think that actually serves that person to enable them to have a one-sided relationship. So anyway, I think that I'm going to leave it there. I obviously know that for some people, they're leaving a relationship that is a lot more severe than what I have outlined. And I just bring up some of these behaviors because it's so important to be intentional in relationships and not just go through the motions and act like it's okay to be treated with disrespect. I don't believe that that's ever okay. And so anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this. If you'd like a personal reading, the link to my website is below in the description box. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye.